The story starts on a battlefield littered with dead bodies of soldiers and mercenaries. The number of corpses was horrifying that it nearly looked like a mass graveyard than a battlefield. Though, among these corpses, there was one living survivor. A man in a tattered cloak and worn-out sword was kneeling on the ground. Injuries covered his body and his stamina was almost rock bottom. He looked at his dead comrades lying around. It was depressing to behold, but death was inevitable in war. Suddenly, a voice was heard amongst these corpses. A tint of regret was evident in its voice. It sighed at his carelessness for not expecting a strong human. The survivor found the source of the sound and he was not a bit happy to see this person's survival. Not a person, but more of a creature. The man was standing on top of its body and it has a pale skin and 2 sets of wings and horns. The man knew of this creature, the giant Ahaiyute. He was the last of the 3 giants who appeared 20 days ago and wreaked havoc for unknown reasons. Ahaiyute was responsible for this war, turning half of the empire into a cemetery. Even though they defeated Ahaiyute in the end, it cost almost everything they had and everyone on the battlefield just to stop him. But even with that, Ahaiyute was still alive. In response to the man, Ahaiyute told him that his time will not be long and he will return to his side. That Ahaiyute was talking about wasn't the man or anyone in this world. It could be his creator or someone higher than him. The man was reassured. He told Ahaiyute that his friends were waiting for him on the other side. By friends, the man meant the other 2 giants that came with him. Though one was burnt to a crisp by a hot-tempered dragon and the other one was sealed for eternity by an old man called Lorien. With this fact, the man was delighted with their success in defeating the 3 giants. But Ahaiyute has a different story to tell. According to him, the children of the star, which was them, share their senses. He knew full well that the dragon and the old man were annihilated along with the other 2 giants. This would only mean that there was no one to protect this world. He also knew that the man was also reaching his time soon. If he only dedicated himself to training his skills and became stronger than he was right now before they appeared, the man could have been a bigger obstacle for them. In the end, it was all for naught. In the end, this world will be engulfed by the starlight and disappear. The man has had enough of Ahaiyute's babbling and beheaded the giant in one full swing. With this, Ahaiyute has finally died. The man understood Ahaiyute's words. But how can he change what has been done? He has wasted his life in other things other than getting stronger. He might have saved his comrades. His comrades, who fought until the end and died on the same battlefield. But what really confused the man was that he was the only one who can injure Ahaiyute. The same giant who can defend against the Empire's strongest aura. If he was only much stronger, they wouldn't have to die first by standing in the front line. But what can a single man do in a huge battle like this? Regret and sadness engulfed the man's mind and heart. Suddenly, the man heard a low voice calling out for help. He then followed the voice and dragged his feet toward its location. There, he saw a lady, resting her back against a boulder. This sight delighted the man. He was thinking that he was the only survivor of this war, to think that she survived as well. The lady's name was Adeshan, the great commander of the empire. However, on closer inspection, Adeshan was missing her right arm. The man jokingly greeted his superior about her missing right arm. Adeshan replied that he wasn't great himself. She also referred to the man as Ronan. Jokes aside, Adeshan asked about Ahaiyute. Ronan confirmed to her the death of their enemy. This news brought joy to Adeshan and she shed tears while thanking Ronan. Ronan was quite surprised to see the different side of his stern superior. Ronan then changed the subject and asked her a request since she was grateful. His request was a decent burial for the disciplinary soldiers, his cherished comrades. Usually, as per the regulations, the dead bodies on the battlefield will be abandoned or burned en masse. Adeshan was confused. Ronan could easily request this later on based on his merits alone. But Ronan coughed up blood. Though it may seem like that his situation was better than Adeshan's on the outside, his internal injuries were severe. This is what Ahaiyute was talking about earlier. Ronan doesn't have much time to live. Adeshan understood Ronan's situation. The battle Ronan has fought was too much, even for her, to bear. She then asked Ronan what would he do if ever he survives. Ronan told her what Ahaiyute told him about the starlight engulfing the world that was bothering him. If that were true, if ever he survives, he would like to enter an academy. Though, it was more about his late sister's wish. Her wish was to send him to an academy, which he never did. Regrets do come last, since it took him ages to think about it, and now, he was dying. Looking at the miserable Ronan, Adeshan told him that when the rain stops, the search party will come looking for survivors and he will be saved. But Ronan understood his situation and body more than anyone else. He knew that should that time comes, he will already be dead. While the both of them were discussing, something unbelievable happened around them. The surging storm vanished and the rain completely stopped. Moments later, everything around them suddenly shook. Ronan was confused by the sudden occurrence. But when he looked around, he was shocked at the sight before him. A winged creature was hovering in the sky. Moreover, it has 4 sets of wings, 2 sets more than Ahaiyute's. But it wasn't alone. Beings like Ahaiyute were hovering behind the 8-winged giant. A single 4-winged giant like Ahaiyute has brought death upon half of the empire. How horrifying would happen if these creatures attacked this world? Adeshan was horrified at this sight. She thought that the 3 giants were the last of this catastrophe. To think there was a more powerful force than them. According to her, she has tried to save the world 3 times already. This was her closest attempt to victory yet. It was all for naught. After all, the 3 giants weren't the last of her worries. While Adeshan was drowning in her sorrows and regrets, a loud shout from Ronan snapped her back into reality. In his miserable state, Ronan requested Adeshan to use her telekinesis and shoot him upwards for him to fight those creatures. Adeshan was confused. Why would Ronan want to fight them at that state? But Ronan was unwilling to go down without a fight. Death was already ensured for him even if he doesn't fight, so instead of cowering in fear, he will at least try and go down with 1 or 2 giants with him into the grave. Adeshan was speechless. Ronan's determination shut every word she has in store. But this also gave Adeshan an idea. If it wasn't obvious by now, Adeshan was a regressor. She has been regressing for the 3rd time now, trying to save the world from the 3 giants. Now, she only has 1 more attempt. But looking at the enemies in front of her, she can't think of how he could defeat such force by regressing one last time. It took her 3 attempts at stopping Ahaiyute, yet she still lost an arm. But Ronan was different. He battled Ahaiyute alone and came up on top. If he could do it all over again and be prepared for the future battle, he might have a higher chance of winning than her. With this in mind, Adeshan stood and approached Ronan, face to face. From her mouth, a blue marble came out and was transferred to Ronan. Ronan was obviously confused. What was his commander doing in such a precarious situation? But suddenly, Adeshan's figure changed. Her uniform changed to a white normal shirt and her haggard and stern face turned into a sweet and innocent face. Adeshan then requested Ronan that if they would ever meet again, tell her to not do anything stupid and become a tailor. Ronan was speechless. He can't figure out what was happening right in front of him. While they were preoccupied, the 8-winged giant readied its power to attack them. When the giant released its spell, everything went white, and Ronan woke up in a green flat land. This place, it was a place he recognized. It was his hometown, Nimbaten. This was an unbelievable sight. He was dying just a second ago and now, he was back to his hometown in a snap. But remembering what Adeshan told him, everything seems to make sense. According to what Adeshan told him, the ball that she gave was the one responsible for her strength. The one responsible for turning a tailor into a commander with telekinetic powers. The regression orb, it allows the wielder to regress for a total of 4 times. Since she has used 3 attempts, there was only 1 more attempt left. She has given up the last chance to regress to Ronan because she believes that the key to saving the world, the sword that can kill the giants, was Ronan. And by allowing Ronan to regress with his memory of the future, he will become stronger and more prepared than she was. It was a huge sacrifice, for the sake of the whole world. Adeshan felt Ronan's determination in becoming stronger. Ronan also expressed his willingness to get into an academy for his late sister's wish, hence she recommended the Filian Academy. A very well-known academy for producing outstanding people. Ronan remembered what Adeshan has told him like they were talking just a while ago. But it was still surreal for him, hence he kept banging his head into a tree in an attempt to wake him up if ever this was all just his dreams. Even if all of this was real, what can he do all by himself? This regression wasn't planned, he doesn't have any plans set beforehand. Ronan felt lost for a moment, but then a thought struck him. It was the past, he was still in their hometown. Could he possibly able to see his elder sister once again this time? With this thought in his mind, Ronan picked up a long stick on the ground and ran towards the village in anticipation. When Ronan was running through the streets, something caught his attention. He caught sight of a group of male teens gathered in front of another male teen suspended upside down on a tree. Though, when Ronan looked closely, he noticed that the male teen who was suspended upside down wasn't tied by a rope. It was like something invisible was holding onto his leg. Ronan knew of this magic, telekinesis. Someone with this power was a valuable asset on the battlefield. To think someone in his hometown knew how to use telekinesis. But after some thought, Ronan remembered something. Around this time, they were here too. Who were they? Only Ronan knew. Meanwhile, over the tree where a child was hanged upside down, a red-haired girl was standing a couple of feet behind other teens. Her hands were emitting a mystical blue aura. Yes, she was the one responsible for hanging the child upside down without a rope. Though, she never agreed to this action. She was even worried for the one that was being suspended in midair upside down. The guy who was leading the other teens was facing the child. The child was begging him to understand that he doesn't have money at hand because his mother's medicine was expensive. However, the guy did not feel any remorse and slapped the child without pity while telling him that he doesn't care about his mother's situation. If he wanted to be a good son, he should earn more. He continued to beat the child up while his buddies were amused by the scene. After beating the child up, the guy turned toward the girl and commanded her to lift the child to the top of the tree. But the girl was hesitant. She was worried that she might slip up and the child will fall from that height. But the guy wasn't having it. He ordered her again to lift the boy high or she will be hanged with him. The girl felt lost. How did everything become like this? She learned magic to show everyone that she was good at something too. But everything fell apart after that. Now, she was being threatened to use her magic in a bad way. This won't do, the girl thought. When she tried to muster the courage to say no to the guy threatening her, she can't utter a single word due to fright. While the girl was battling his cowardice internally, a stick whacked her from the back. It was Ronan, and his action made the girl lose focus and the boy who was being hung fell. The guy was mad at this turn of events and he turned toward the red-haired girl to reprimand her. But before he could hit the girl, Ronan got in between them and told her to stop worrying about trashes like him and that he should talk to Ronan instead. Also, Ronan called the boy Asel. Ronan then conversed with Asel while disregarding the other guy. He asked Asel about her power and where she learned it. Asel answered politely, saying that she learned it from a grimoire that she bought from a peddler. Ronan was quite shocked at this revelation. Learning telekinesis from a cheap grimoire was amazing. While Ronan was pondering the information, he heard a familiar sound from behind him. The sound of a sword being drawn out from its sheath. It appears that the guy has had enough of Ronan's actions and decided to use violence instead. Weapons can make an incompetent man feel confident and powerful, and so is this guy. He knew Ronan since he lost to him back in the day, but today, he has a sword and he wasn't afraid to use it. With his, quote, impeccable stance, he dashed to Ronan while brandishing his sword. He dodged the incoming attack easily like it was as slow as a snail. Of course, that was to be expected. Ronan was fighting a war just a while ago. Even with the body of a teenager that lacks muscles and stamina, his instincts alone can toy with this guy. But the guy thought that Ronan was just lucky for dodging that attack. Ronan did not refute it and just let the guy boast. The guy then told Ronan to kneel down now and he will spare him his life, but he will leave without an arm. Ronan did not bother to get angry with this guy. Even Ahaiyute wasn't able to make him kneel. How can a village bully make him do so? However, the guy said something unnecessary. The guy started talking about Ronan's elder sister. The guy told him that he will treat his sister well and that he was fantasizing about her plump and juicy ass every time he saw her. I mean, he was a man of culture, but he should have chosen the right time, the right place, and the right person to talk smack to. Especially when he was openly admitting his fetish to the one who was related to the person you're fantasizing with. Obviously, this did not go well. Ronan's anger swelled while he was looking at the guy talking. Without any signal or sign, Ronan slashed his wooden stick toward the guy, and a splash of blood splurted. With his wooden sword, Ronan detached the guy's left side ear. The guy curled up in pain as he held his bloodied wound. Ronan approached the guy who was almost on the ground and called out to him in a cold and murderous tone. He was so angry that he was about to kill the guy, but he settled for his one ear. The other teens watched this impossible scene. They all holding a stick, But how can he cut off the guy's ear with a wooden stick like it was a sharp sword? Ronan then called out the other teens and told them to get the beaten guy up and scram. Also, he wanted them to leave the money they stole from the boy and a little bit of something for ruining his mood. They all abided by Ronan's command and left with the injured guy. Ronan then gave the money he got to the boy they hung. The boy was shocked at the sheer amount of the money, but Ronan was satisfied with just the long sword the guy left. Ronan accepted the boy's thanks and suggested that he go home. But before the boy could even walk away, they heard the stuttering voice of Asel. She was trying to apologize for hanging him upside down earlier. She was admitting to her mistakes and cried while asking for forgiveness. The boy chuckled at this sight. From the beginning, he understood that Asel was in the same situation as him, being threatened by that guy. He told Asel that it wasn't her fault and accepted her apology. After that, the boy left with the money he lost and more for his mother's medicine. Ronan then tapped Asel and reminded her of what they talked about earlier. He then told Asel to meet him here in 4 days. Asel was confused and asked for details, but Ronan left with the ambiguous appointment, telling her to be there when the moon is up. Meaning, during the night of the full moon. Also, he did not forget to attach a threat in case Asel will think of ghosting him at that time. With that, Ronan left the place and rushed to his home, leaving Asel behind. Later that day, Ronan arrived at a small house somewhere in their village. He was standing outside, seemingly nervous. He thought of things he could gift to his sister and plucked these flowers since his sister loved flowers. But Ronan was feeling embarrassed at the thought of him giving flowers to his sister whom he has never seen for so long. Of course, that was the case for Ronan only. When he was about to throw the bouquet he was holding, the door opened, and a lady with silver blonde hair came out from inside. Ronan was lost for words while he looked at this lady. Back then, before he regressed, he has been thinking of things he would say when he will see her again. He left his hometown and his elder sister without a word back then and only realized what he did when he became a disciplinary soldier. He thought of 1,000 words that he wanted to say to her back then, but this time, he could only utter 2. "I'm back." Inside their house, Ronan's sister, Iris, was brimming with joy since he received a flower from his cold little brother. Because of this, Errol made a lot of food for Ronan to eat out of pure joy. Then Ronan asked for Errol's age this time. Errol told Ronan that she was 22. With this information, Ronan finally knew the exact time he was sent back to, 10 years to the past. That would only mean that he has less than 10 years to prepare before the giants invade. Ronan then looked at his worried sister who thought that he has a fever for forgetting her age. Ronan felt warm after a long while. Yes, that's right, he remembered that his sister was always like this, kind and warm. He felt peaceful after a very long time. But this peace will not hold on for too long. This peace and warmth he was feeling right now reminded him of his duty. He needs to be stronger and fast. With that in mind, Ronan told Errol that he wanted to enter an academy. This was his sister's wish before he left his hometown and his sister. After hearing what Ronan has to say, Errol became happier than ever. It has been her dream and goal to send Ronan to an academy. To think Ronan would openly tell her about entering an academy himself. She then ran to a corner and started digging through the pile of things there. In a moment, Errol pulled out a huge pot. Inside the pot was the money Errol has saved over the years for Ronan's study. Ronan was dumbstruck at such an amount. Though he appreciates his sister's effort for saving up for him, but this amount of money will not be enough for the academy he was planning to go to. Errol was confused. She was sure that this amount will be enough no matter where academy he was planning to enroll in. But when she heard the name of the Filian Academy from Ronan, she was shocked. Well, that was to be expected. Filian Academy was an imperial school. It has the continent's most outstanding professors. With the help of the imperial family's funding, the academy has been giving the finest education. It has produced a couple of outstanding figures like the Grand Commander Adeshan, Swordmaster Shulafan, and the worst criminal, the Winter Witch. With such a standard, it was understandable why the fee was high. Aside from the fees, the entrance exam was also an issue. While pondering over it, Ronan arrived at the appointed place. It has been 4 days now since he regressed and it was the time for him and Asel's appointment. Asel was already there when Ronan arrived since she was afraid of Ronan's threats. Ronan laughed it off and put his bags down. He then told Asel that they will be conducting a test right now. Asel was confused. She doesn't understand what Ronan was talking about. With a simple explanation, Ronan told Asel to use telekinesis on him and lift him as high as she can. Asel was taken aback. Not long ago, she hung a young man upside down with telekinesis. But now, Ronan wanted her to use telekinesis on him and lift him as high as possible. Asel was worried for Ronan, but he reassured her that he will be okay and just do as he said. Asel reluctantly agreed and started using telekinesis. With a wave of her hand, blue mist covered Ronan's body. After a moment, Ronan was lifted through the air. This sensation reminded him of his fight with Ahaiyute. He used the help of mages from below to lift him up and fight Ahaiyute on equal footing. Though the height and stability were quite poor, Asel was just starting to learn the basics. With this, Ronan thought of honing Asel's talent so he will be able to help him in the battle that will come. After a short moment, Asel has reached her limits and asked Ronan to go down as he can't take it anymore. Ronan asked for a moment since he still has one last thing to test. With a swing from his long sword, Ronan cut Asel's mana and came down himself. This turn of event dumbfounded Asel. How can he cut someone's mana like it was a natural thing to do? Asel was asking about the matter, but Ronan doesn't have the answer either. He only knew that he can cut mana, and that was one of the things he has to look into after regressing. His ability to cut mana with a sword must be the reason why he can injure Ahaiyute, who was impervious to the Empire's strongest aura. With the test done, Ronan picked up one of the bags on the ground. He then tossed one to Asel and told her to follow him into the woods before the full moon disappears. The two of them hit the dirt road, and while walking, Ronan told Asel of his plan to enter the Filion Academy. Ronan wanted Asel to go with him to the academy, but Asel knew how hard it was to pass the entrance test in that academy, not to mention the very expensive tuition fee. Asel was doubtful of her admission there. Ronan would be fine, but she was weak and cowardly. Asel was self-deprecating, but Ronan asked her if he wanted to continue living like that for the rest of his life, using her innate talent by humoring punks just like 4 days ago. Ronan agreed that she was weak, timid, and cowardly, but she can change that starting today. If she decided to stick to her beliefs right now and ends up stagnating, she will be left behind with time. What was done is done. Nobody can change what was in the past, and at that time, he will regret not manning up to the challenge of changing his own life. Ronan knew full well of this feeling. He realized it the hard way. It was good for him now that he got to regress, but Asel has only one shot at life. It was now or never. Hearing Ronan's words, Asel felt happy. To think that Ronan was worried for her. After that speech, Asel became clear about what she wanted to do and agreed to Ronan's plan of entering the academy with him. Though it may sound like Ronan was actually worried, he just wanted Asel to grow and become a competent helper in the future. Which was not a bad thing since it has the fate of the entire world behind it. After a moment of walking, the both of them arrived at an area. This place shocked Asel. Ronan told her along the way that she will be training his telekinesis. But he can't believe that he will use it here, at the campsite of the lunar goblin. While Ronan was feeling optimistic, Asel was horrified. There was a leader goblin among the creatures present. Lunar goblins were different from normal goblins. They were usually differentiated by their yellow skin and disfigured bodies. But the unique trait of lunar goblins lies in their incredible greed for gold and treasures. They will ambush merchant fleets for their treasure and gather them in one place to hold a festival on a night with a full moon. The real reason why they were here was the same reason why the lunar goblins were here. For the treasures. Asel understood the gist of it, but how can they get the treasure from them? Ronan then told him of his cunning plan. Asel just had to use telekinesis to get those treasures in the distance, silently and safely, and then put them inside the bag without waking up the goblins. If ever she did so, they will be screwed. After hearing the details, Asel was now feeling nervous. But Ronan told him that in order for them to get admitted to the Filion Academy, they immediately need 2 things. The first one was obviously money for their absurd tuition fee. The second one was a real combat experience. Filion Academy was filled with aristocrats that have been trained since young. The only thing that they can do to surpass them was to put their lives on the line and gain as much experience as possible. Regarding the goblins, it was a good source of experience and money, so it was like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. With no more room to argue on, Asel was forced to do his bidding. Slowly but surely, Asel has been delivering the treasures from the chest into their backpacks. After a while, they filled 2 backpacks worth of treasures. Ronan congratulated Asel for a job well done. Ronan wasn't expecting much from Asel, but he was able to pull it off nicely, which made Ronan somewhat proud and relieved that he found a good minion. With that, Ronan packed the backs as they decided to leave before something goes wrong. But Ronan just had to say that and gave a chance for the red flag to rise. Somewhere not far away from their location, two armed men were running after something. They were chasing a bird flying through the woods. In frustration, one of them shouted at the bird to stop. But not only the bird did not stop, but his voice also traveled toward Ronan's location. This woke up the lunar goblin. When the goblin looked at the chest, it was shocked to see it empty. Who would be so daring as to steal from them? The goblin shouted loudly and woke up the other lunar goblins. They gathered to look for the missing treasure and for the possible thief, but they caught sight of something. The two figures of Ronan and Asel. Now, they were in for a good time. After seeing the unfamiliar figure of Ronan and Asel, the goblins all dashed toward them with hatred in their eyes. Asel was frightened as her knees gave away. Ronan wasn't in a panic, he let the bag down and readied his sword. Asel asked Ronan if they should run, but Ronan doesn't like the idea of ditching their money behind. With his experience and battle sense from his future self, Ronan can easily deal with these monsters. He inspected his long sword and concluded that it can withstand more or less 15 attacks before breaking. There were 30 goblins charging at them. He needs to kill multiple with every attack to accommodate the number of monsters. When the goblins were right in front of him, Ronan brandished his sword and beheaded 3 goblins at once. If he continued to do so, he will only need 10 attacks for 30 goblins. Ronan then engaged in a bloody fight against the horde of lunar goblins. After a moment, Ronan wiped the lunar goblins. Asel has been watching all this time and he was shocked at Ronan's combat ability. After Ronan beheaded 3 goblins in one strike, he disappeared and reappeared again in a blink of an eye and killed the other goblins. This sight both mesmerized and frightened Asel. Suddenly, Asel heard Ronan calling out to him. He was been spacing out for some time now. The fight was over, time to head back. After that, the two hit the dirt road again with their spoils. Asel was complaining about the bag being so heavy while Ronan was massaging his sore shoulder. Though he still has the same skills he had before regressing, his body has become young and untrained, hence his body was aching after that fight. Asel then asked Ronan about that scream just a while ago. Ronan doesn't have any clue about the screaming, but they sure gave them trouble for causing a ruckus in the middle of the woods in the dead of the night. While the both of them were discussing, someone behind them notched an arrow on their bow and aimed it toward them. They released the arrow and it flew off toward Asel's back. She sensed the arrow behind him and turned around, but it was a bit too late. However, before it struck Asel, Ronan caught the arrow an inch away from hitting Asel. Just at this moment that Asel realized that he could have been dead by now. Ronan looked in the distance and saw 2 guys armed with a bow and a sword. According to them, they thought they were creatures and not humans, especially children at that. This comment pissed Ronan. He has been living as an adult before 4 days ago, so being referred to as a child was akin to looking down on him. They apologized while they were approaching, but once they saw a glimpse of what the bags contained, they exchanged glances as if hinting something. Obviously, Ronan saw through it. They were amateurs compared to Ronan in terms of real-world experience, hence this act of deceit was nothing for him. Realizing that these two were thinking of robbing them, Ronan asked them coldly for their identities. But who would take a child's threat seriously? One of them approached Ronan while acting friendly. The guy slowly reached out to his dagger. When he arrived at striking distance, he shouted their identities as Calaboros and showed his true colors by attacking Ronan with his dagger. However, Ronan caught his hand and struck him by the neck, causing him to black out. It would seem that Ronan knew of these Calaboros and he flashed a disdainful glint in his eyes. Seeing his buddy being handed his ass by a child, the one at the back moved and attacked Ronan with his dagger. However, Asel intervened with her telekinesis and stopped the man in his tracks. The man was confused. Why can't he move? Ronan realized what Asel did and he was quite happy that he helped him this time instead of just watching. Ronan kicked the dagger off the man's hand, caught the dagger in midair and slashed the man a couple of times, killing him in the process. The body fell in front of Asel and he was disturbed by that sight. Though she was alright with the corpses of lunar goblins, a human corpse was very disturbing for him. For Ronan though, it was a common sight. Ronan told Asel that these two were Calaboro. They were a notorious group responsible for poaching, kidnapping, and human trafficking. The Empire's most evil poaching group. Ronan did not forget about the other one and stabbed him with the dagger. These guys have planned on killing them and harvesting their organs so he would not feel any remorse for trashes like them. Ronan thought of taking the valuables and leaving the forest immediately, but the bag they have been carrying all this time moved all by itself like something inside it was throwing a fit. Knowing that they were poachers, Asel thought it must be an animal, hence they untied it to let what was inside go. Once the bag was opened, a figure of a bird flew out of the bag in a blink of an eye. The bird then hovered above them as if it was showing its majestic form. However, Ronan was wondering, what was this chicken-looking thing? Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. And see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.